Hey, how's it going, everybody? And it's so good to see you all tuning in again. And I'm just super excited to come back to this live stream community. And as you know, that I was really excited before when during the COVID time, and we all kind of joining together, have this long, lovely photography discussion. But now it's the brand new series, brand new name. It's called the Red Hot Talk, and together I'm going to have an industry expert, the industry expert, and he's going to join us and have a really cool discussion about switching system. I think it's going to be really amazing. I cannot really say how glad or honored I am to have him on board here. So without further ado, let's bring him in so we can have a little discussions together. And so let me just bring him into our to see the audience here. Right. Okay. Can everybody see? I'm just trying to see if suddenly my window disappears. So this is not a good thing. Oh, there we go. Find you now. Okay. There we go. Okay. So welcome to Rod Lawton. And how are you today? Fantastic. And I know that many of you have know me already, and but because this is a brand new series, I would like to do a small introduction about myself. Then I'm going to hand the mic to Rod so he can tell you a little bit more about himself and why he deserves a place in here. So, my name is Jimmy Chang. I'm a professional photographer and filmmaker based in London, and I have been shooting professionally for the best part of 15, 16 years now. And I have used multiple systems before. I grew up with Canon system, and I have used Leica. I've used medium format film cameras, and also lately, of course, you all know that I'm using Micro Four Thirds. So my main kind of specialty is always going to be people portrait, location portrait series that I've been doing over the last 10 years. Of course, I shoot weddings as well. And so this is kind of my background. I mean, I'm happy to answer anything relating to this sort of field, genre of photography. If you like to know more about portraits, but now let me give you the mic to Rod and tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Oh, hang on, Rod. We have an audio issue. I think someone said that they can't hear you. Wait 1 second. Let me see. I don't think I have you muted, so you should be able to talk. They said no sound from you. That is very strange. The problem is I can hear everything Rod says at the moment. Okay. Right. Let me just check on the sound panel here. And you're definitely not muted. Not muted. And I'm not entirely sure. So if you want, you can try to come back in again. Let me just make sure that this is not a temporary problem. Okay. So let's come out and come back in again. So sorry, guys, and I don't know what happened in the audio side, and trying to get back in again. It's really weird because we tested just now, and okay, she's back now. Let me just see if I can actually get him in. Let's see. Right, can anybody hear Rod talking? Say something, Rod. Okay. Yeah, your sound's definitely working fine from this end. I can see the sound panels going fine. And have I got anything that I haven't touched anything? Let me see. Someone said no, they still can't hear you. Okay. Nope. I got a lot of no's. Oh dear. Okay, right. What else can I do here? I am trying to. Let me try something. Output audio monitor mini fuse. Okay. Right. Can anybody hear me? And Rod, can you say 1, 2, 3? Let me see. Okay, I'm waiting for people to say whether they can hear or not. I think so. That is strange. Now, oh, still nothing. Oh, hang on. Someone say yes. Someone say yes. Okay, right. It's right. Let me see if I can bring in more stuff. Okay, anyone? Anyone hear Rod? Right. Strangely, I don't know whether it's location related. Michael from Italy can hear you. Oh dear me. Okay, right. Can anybody hear? I'm hearing myself twice at the moment. I've done something to the audio. Uh, okay, guys. I need some feedback from you guys to see whether the audio is okay. Everybody can say that they can hear me, but not you. Virtual mic is on, cam on. That is okay. Right. Is there any other way I can take you in? You can try. Maybe just a software issue. While you're doing it, I'm gonna try something. Let's see now. Sorry, guys. It's been a while since my last stream, so I can see that I'm a little rusty here. So give me a moment, and hopefully I can resolve the audio issues that we have. Okay, audio monitor off. Okay, and have you unplugged it? Have you unplugged the mic already? Yep. Okay, you do that, and I am going to do a solo show at the moment. Okay, right, and so we will give a little time to Rod, but because for my end, there's nothing else I can do, and my audio control has shown there is input, there is audio there, so I'm not sure why there is no audio at your end, and so we will see. Okay, now brought this back just to see if I can bring him in again. Okay, right. Okay, guys, can you hear Rod? Hopefully, there is something. Come on, third time lucky. Give me something. Someone actually asked you to join the live chat, actually in the chat room. So that means you're gonna be very busy with your fingers to type all the response. Kra said no. So there's still nothing. I can show you my screen. It shows that your voice is on, and I can actually see it. I can hear you. That means it is something. It's the relay that is not working at the moment, and yeah. Let me just see, because it's very weird. Let me just see now. I'm gonna just to switch off something. Okay, I'm gonna disable many things, and okay, say something again, guys. Can you hear Rod?
Can anyone hear me now? Is this working at all? This is all quite irritating, I know, but stick with us. Stick with us. It'll be worth it, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, your volume's maxed out, and
okay. So,
come on.
so
I'm waiting
any
for
luck
some
at all?
response at the moment. I'm waiting for them to tell me
Yeah,
whether there is something.
yeah. It's a bit weird that some people can hear and some can't. Uh,
Yeah.
I really don't know what
Oh,
to
yes,
suggest
they
about
can hear
that.
you. They can hear you.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
yes. Oh my God, we fixed it.
Ah,
Oh my goodness. All right. Okay, Rod. 10 minutes wasted. And we have finally have you here, and hopefully it's loud and clear. Yep,
okay.
everybody's happy now. So
Phew,
the
phew.
mic is your, Rod. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and who you are, what you've been doing, and why we should hear from you.
Okay. So I'm a professional photography and tech journalist. I've been doing this for 30 years, mostly as a freelance, but I've also done stints editing magazines. I've been a technique editor. I've been the camera channel editor on Tech Radar. I've just finished a stint as group reviews editor for Digital Camera World and Future Publishing's photographic magazines. Um, my main speciality, I suppose, would be cameras, lenses, and accessories. I've written about everything from smartphones to medium format, but I think I probably specialise most of all in DSLRs and mirrorless. I also write about photo editing, and I've got my own site at lifeafterphotoshop.com where I write about things that you may have guessed from the name aren't Photoshop. Um, that's it really. I think I've probably used almost every DSLR and mirrorless camera launched. There are probably a few I haven't, but it seems like one very long procession of cameras. So I think I have a sympathy and an understanding for all these different systems.
Right. This is the reason I bring Rod here, because he has so much knowledge and experience with all kinds of cameras and platforms, and he's seen basically everything from the last 15, 20 years, you would say?
I'd say I got into full time photography journalism pretty much about 2000 2001. So I've been covering digital cameras ever since then.
So you were right at the beginning when the digital evolution started.
Yeah, when they were all terrible and we didn't know.
When everybody telling you that digital is rubbish, can never rival film photography, right?
I may have been one of those people, but
Despite you
we'll
writing for it.
draw a veil over that. We'll draw a veil over that. We can all change our minds. Things happen.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, thank you, Rod. And so, as you all know, that today's topic is about switching system, and the reason why I chose this as the title for our very first live chat is because this is something that really that come up very often every time I publish a videos about, let's say, an Olympus cameras or review of a digital camera, people will always say something about, oh, I'm switching, or I'm switching here, this and that. So this is always one of those most common words that they use nowadays, switching. And by when they say switch, they're actually talking about not switching brands, but actually switching platform. Whether it's going from Micro Four Thirds to APS-C, or vice versa, or from Micro Four Thirds to full frame, or vice versa. Basically platform changing. And so this is quite interesting to me because I, as a photographer, I mean, I started as a film photographer way back in the mid 90s. All I ever know was 120, which is medium format, and then 135. So this is today's full frame. That was the kind of two formats that I mostly used back in the days. And so I'm to me, they are just part of my tools. Which format to use is depending on situations, because we all know the pros and cons of each platform. The 135 obviously is more mobile for me to do location shoot. Medium 4 is more chunky, it's kind of more reserved for a more static environment, so whether it's going to be studio or fixed location shoot. So it's not something that you're going to be like lugging around doing some kind of journalism, so to speak. Things you want to do with lots of movements is always going to be 135. And nowadays, obviously, we have so many different formats now, and each have their pros and cons once again. And switching has becoming very common among photographers because they see technological advances in each platform from time to time. And every time there is a significant improvement on one particular platform, they will be either very curious to find out exactly what the fuss is about, or they just want to try it on. And but this has now come to a point that where people are now switching every 3 years, because every time there's a new flagship camera come out, they will obviously, the manufacturer will rave about certain features that nobody else has, and no particular preferences. Like, let's say OM system or Micro Four Thirds has they always claim to have the best IBIS destabilization in the world, and then full frame say, oh, I have the best noise performance in high ISO. So Rod, tell me in your experience about switching, and whether it means anything to you, whether people should change frequently just for the sake of trying out new technology, or whether it is something that you believe switching will enhance photography in general.
So I think I've probably switched at least as many times as anyone else. I've used from time to time Nikon DSLRs. I had a spell with Fujifilm. Currently, I shoot with Micro Four Thirds and Sony full frame. I've also got a Canon full frame camera I use for tutorials for one of the magazines I write for. In a cupboard in another room, I've got a Pentax K20D. So I've used Pentax DSLRs. So I've switched a lot. And the thing that's gradually dawned on me is that the cameras come and go, but different brands are definitely better for different sorts of lenses. So the reason I'm keen on Micro Four Thirds at the moment is firstly that the lenses are quite small, and there are some very interesting ones, and also that I can afford to buy them, which is not something you can say for other platforms. So I think next time I switch, I'm going to pay more attention to the lenses, because cameras do change. I want to make sure I've got the lenses I like. I like mobile lenses, quite small, quite easy to pack. I like them to be quite good as well. I don't like lenses with a lot of edge softness or chromatic aberration. I don't mind using a smaller format camera, but I do like the lenses to be consistent and quite good. And that's one aspect. The other is that I think all photographers have a kind of natural angle of view, how they see the world, and mine is quite wide. So I like a system with some good ultra wide lenses. And one of the reasons I swapped away from Fujifilm was not the cameras or the lenses I did have, but it's just very difficult to get any really nice, wide, fast lenses that were good. And bless them, the Fujifilm lenses I could afford, not they're good, but they're not as consistent as I would like. So I think for most of my work, I like MFT because you can get good lenses for not much money and they're easy to pack.
Yeah.
For high quality, I've got a Sony A7R2 and a handful of lenses, including some quite nice Sigma primes. So that's good for quality, but it's not particularly mobile system. So it's one that I use when necessary, rather
Right.
than because I like it.
That's an interesting statement from you because I mean I've seen this many times. Even in the community post that I had since a few days ago, there are people responding and they mimic some of the comments, but there are also people who basically counter argue that fact that full frame or larger format cameras are getting smaller, which is true. You know, like you see the likes of Sony A series bodies are getting definitely closer, if not smaller, than some of the larger MFT bodies. You know, and but lenses, on the other hand, if you go for a 1.4, 1.2 prime lenses. If you compare to the similar 1.2, 1.4 lenses, the MFT lenses are still going to be significantly smaller. And this is physics because, you know, you don't need that much of like the front elements. They don't need the big glass in front of it to cover, you know, that much light for the sensor. So you can make everything a lot smaller by default. So the 1.8 primes, which are tiny by comparison, you know, in the MFT, the 17, the 45, and the 25 1.8 lenses are super tiny by comparison. So you can't get similar lenses for that size, even in full frame. You know, I know they're getting tiny, but there's no way you can get sort of 1.8 prime lenses for that sort of size, almost like a pancake lenses.
Yeah, I think if we stick to the Sony brand at the moment, this applies to all the full frame brands though. The cameras are already small enough. I'd say my A7R2 is too small. I'd rather it's slightly bigger. But the lenses are just massive. There's a disconnect there. It's fine for camera makers to say our full frame bodies are getting smaller. It doesn't matter. The lenses are huge. So I think I got A7R5 review in a few weeks ago,
Yep.
and Sony sent it with a 2870 G Master 2.8. It's massive, absolutely colossal. I don't know how people do it. I mean, if it's your job, you will, but nobody would choose to walk around with a camera lens combo that big. I don't think. Well, I wouldn't, but you know, people are different. People have
Yep.
different priorities.
Yeah, it's really something to remember that there is that physical elements there that which people are slowly forget about, and even though that the a lot of the camera manufacturers like Sony, Canon, you know, Nikon, who make full frame cameras, they are making smaller lenses. But if you look at the build, the also the apertures, you know, like they are making f8 lenses to try to bring the size down to the similar level of micro four thirds lenses are. But then when you think about an f8 lens, and then you for the same size, you can have a 2.8 constant aperture lens and a micro four thirds for similar reach. You know, in terms of the angle of view, then you can immediately see the differences there. And I'm not saying which one is best or not, because you can counter argue that full frame has better ISO performance. That means I can
Yeah.
push the ISO to much higher before you see the similar degradation in image quality compared to Micro Four Thirds, for instance. So I guess at the end of the day, it's really depending on photographer's requirement. You know, I'm pretty sure you would agree. And well, what's best for you? Like you said, you prefer a lighter system you can carry out. And I also see some comments in the chat room saying, you know, like I don't shoot low light a lot. I'm not a creepy caller, you know, going out and trying to snipe on people in pitch black. You know, like so like.
Why
So like,
not?
I don't need I don't need a camera that can shoot 1 million ISO. You know, like, I mean, like, you can kind of see that argument there. I mean, I do always say that, you know, if you're into, let's say, photojournalism, or actually no journalism, a newspaper for newspaper, you need to shoot low light a lot, not for the quality but for the content. Then maybe some of these high ISO sensitive cameras will be beneficial for your type of work, not necessarily for artistic reasons, because any artist will tell you, any proper photographer will tell you that if they treasure image quality, they will shoot as low as possible anyway for ISO terms. If they go up to low 50s, they'll go for 50, 100. They rarely go up to 12,800, 5,600 just for art, and unless that's specific aesthetic that you would like to achieve.
I think one thing I ought to add is that I don't think I've ever found one system that on its own would do everything I want. I've generally had two. So I use my Sony for stuff where the quality is important, for projects or articles. But if it's stuff for me or creative stuff, or if I'm going somewhere, I'll take the MFT stuff. There's no way if I go on a city break somewhere in Europe, I'm taking a Sony, and it's huge lenses. One of the issues is that you go somewhere, go to a famous landmark. If you're carrying around a big camera, you're far more likely to get a security guy coming up saying, "You've got a permit." But if you look like a tourist, generally they don't worry so much.
No.
But it's just
absolutely.
And also, I go traveling with my wife. She doesn't want to become a photography widow. She probably is already. But that's a lot more likely with a larger format camera, because I think it encourages you. It makes you take more time and trouble, which is fine for the photography, but it's no good for the person you're with who thought they were going on holiday. So, that's that.
Right. I would definitely echo you about your comment about photography widow. That's a very good point. I mean, I'm pretty sure that everyone listening right now would agree that back in the old days, but let's talk a little bit, move the timeline a little bit further back. When we didn't have mirrorless cameras, we all had DSLRs or SLRs. They were big, right? Like the smallest SLR, DSLR. Let's talk about DSLR now. Probably a lot of you are too young to remember SLR. The Canon D300, the first.
I had one.
Yeah, DSLRs. So even though that at the time was the smallest DSLR on the market, but it's still nowhere small compared to what we have today. And the lenses, of course, they are full frame lenses, and because they didn't have much APS-C, specific lenses, so they were all using EF lenses, so which are all full frame lenses. And I remember that I went to Prague with my then girlfriend, now wife, for holiday, and I had my low pro 200 backpack, and that was a massive, gigantic backpack. I mean, I have just the camera body with a grip attached, and then and I have only about 3 or 4 lenses on it, but they were massive. They had this 7200 2.8, like the 24 70 2.8, all these 2.8 lenses, the trio basically. And then and that backpack itself, it weighs about, 8 kilo. That's including the bag itself, maybe a bit more. And I mean, I could totally relate to what you said. Like every time I travel, I would carry the same huge backpack. I mean, I walk about 20 minutes. I would just ask my wife, can we find somewhere to sit down for coffee? I'm feeling a little bit tired. Even then, I was younger and more healthy and more energetic. But, I still find it a bit tiring just to carry those gears around, especially in a hot country. And comparatively to what we have today, and 6-7 years ago when I first got my EM5, the first Micro Four Thirds camera that I ever used, and I went to Venice with my wife. Now wife, not girlfriend. So she endured that photography widow period very well. So I was carrying just the EM5 with 2 lenses, the kit lens and a 25 1.4, the Panasonic Leica prime lens. 2 lenses. I put it in a tiny bag, and I managed to walk around Venice with my wife. We're happy, do you feel anything? She didn't feel intimidated with the huge backpack, and on me. And I think the whole thing about traveling is first of all, of course, if you are into photography, you want to take some nice photos, you want to do a lot of things, but at the same time, don't forget that you're also with someone else. Potentially, you can be a solo project or solo travel, but if you're with someone else, you really want to enjoy that moment. So enjoy the city, enjoy everything that's surrounding you, not always bogged down with heavy stuff and gear. Even though no matter how fit you are, you can walk maybe 10 miles with 20 kilos in your back, and but that besides the point. It doesn't look right. If you having all that bulk in with you all the time. So that's interesting. And I also have another comment from my live post was someone said that I think MFT is really good, but also have other system, which is a bit like you, Rod. And so I just choose whatever system that fits whatever things I'm doing or wherever I'm traveling, which is fantastic. I think fine. There's no. People always say that just because I'm into Micro Four Thirds now and because I'm an OM system ambassador, that I just sell Micro Four Thirds to everybody. I never really said that in this channel, and I always say, like, if you find your system, that's perfect. Like, all I'm looking at is photography. Yes, I do promote Micro Four Thirds just because I'm using it, and then, but I don't particularly try to force you into the system in a way that marketing people might do to you. So we are here looking at images, and I do think, in terms of general photography, let's put it that way, general photography, what you can share your own experience. And MFT would definitely satisfy 95% of the people out there, and because of the way it is and how the system works, and also like you said about the lenses. I actually personally think that it's more than adequate, and which we can of course set up another chat to talk more specifically about formats. But what do you think about Micro Four Thirds in general? Can it still relate to modern photography, or is it like that you think no, they're not good enough? You need to move up a level to APS-C, maybe even full frame, if not even medium format.
Well, I suppose what I would say is, if you think Micro Four Thirds is not good enough, I would say, what is it not good enough for? And if you just have a broad feeling that, well, a bigger sensor would be better, you might be right. But if you're not selling to clients who want more megapixels or bigger enlargements, or you never really need anything larger yourself, I think you just need to do a bit of a reality check. We would all love the best. I would like to have a Leica system. Can't possibly justify it. And those Leica M cameras are really hard work. That's what I would like, but I can't have it. And I think for all the work I do, where my images are used online, I never use MFT at its full resolution. Because if you do the maths, you're looking at something on a 4K screen.
Yep. That's
4,000 pixels wide. You're looking at a 12 megapixel image. MFT's 20, full frame 24, 30, 42, 45, 60. Are you going to use it? I think I like to have it because I'm a pixel people, like most of us are. And I like to go in and say, oh, look at that detail. That is amazing. It is very satisfying. But if you want to take a practical approach, how much do you need? So that's what I have to think about when choosing what camera to take out with me. I do wish my MFT cameras had full frame sensors. I really, really do. But then if I had to use full frame lenses, I'd think again. And I think on balance, for any one job, I think I'll take the MFT.
Right. Okay.
Because you can have it in your pocket.
Yes.
It's not. So I keep banging the mic. It's not like your backpack where you have to stop, take it off, shuffle around, get the thing out, put it back on, start shooting. You can keep it all in the shoulder bag. Rummage. Out comes your camera. Oh, a different lens. There you go, and you're off again.
Yep.
That's my style of shooting. But I know some people take a lot more time and trouble.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you remember the days when during the film days, because I'm not how many of you still shoot films or remember film photography, and we can change ISO sensitivities in camera these days, like on the switch. But back in the old days, you're fixed with one film speed all the time. So like you for those photography enthusiasts, you often see them carrying 3, if not 4 cameras on the body at any one time because they have different film speed, or one or 2 for color, 2 for black and white, and it's crazy. And I remember every time back in the 90s, traveling. You see some of these like professional photographers, travel photographers, and they just have so many cameras and lenses, and they will have a trolley with them because they have so much gear. And you can really see that thing has advanced so much since. And but go back to the argument you're saying about how easy it is for MFT system now, especially for moving around, traveling, and quick shooting. And there's no denying that the MFT have that benefit when it comes to that. And even the video that I produced a couple of months ago, that I went up do some 1.2 prime lenses promotion for OM, and when I do the portrait with a hiker, and so you all may have remember them, Marta. And so in that video I showed you how quickly I changed my lens and how fast I was shooting. I wasn't really holding back. Before I had MFT, when I was still using Canon, I was using a huge Billingham bag, which I had about, 20 kilo worth of equipment. I have to have it in my shoulder and still have to hike up the mountain to do that sort of shoot. If you ask me to do that right now, I will probably have a heart attack and just die. And so definitely MFT has satisfied me in that regard. And I'm pretty sure that unless you have a team with you and that will carry the gear for you, if you're just going to be a solo project, going to be doing all by yourself, and to me, you've seen the sample photos, and there is I wouldn't say there is a tangible difference between shooting with full frame or MFT. And as a photographer, you adjust to system, you adjust to depth of field, you adjust to angle of view, you do the math yourself. And for those who operate multiple platforms, for those who use my MFT, APS-C, and also full frame, would definitely appreciate what I'm saying. You can adjust your style to shoot the different type of photography, so a different gear. And because Rod, you will probably say that the same thing. Sometimes if you want to shoot because you like wide lenses, right? You like a wide angle of views. If you use a full frame, like let's say a 2.8 16mm lens, and if you shoot something indoor, and you will find that even with ultra wide a lens like that with 2.8 aperture, you still give you a little bit of shallow depth of field there. So depending on how close your subject or the focusing point is to your camera, you can still easily separate the subject compared to the background. But MFT, on the other hand, if you want everything in focus, it's actually quite a cool thing to do. As you can shoot 2.8, but because of the equivalent kind of depth of field is about 5.66, if not deeper. So you can actually do things that you probably would like or enjoy more with that wide angle environment.
Yeah, I think so. Before this turns into an MFT sermon, no offense, Jimmy, because I like MFT too. I just want to call out Fujifilm as well for making a system with some properly sized little f2 prime lenses. If you're interested in traveling light while having a traditional set of controls, don't forget Fujifilm. The only reason I switched away was because it's difficult getting anything as wide as I liked in a prime.
Yep.
Which is why I like Olympus and to a degree Panasonic at the moment, MFT in general. If Fujifilm made the lenses that, well, if the Laowa's got for MFT, I think we'll probably talk about Laowa at some point, won't we? If I could get those for Fujifilm X-Man, I'd probably be going on about Fujifilm right now. But it's not so easy, which is why I tend to look at the lenses at least as much as the cameras. The reason I switched away from Fujifilm was not the cameras. Cameras are great. I just couldn't quite get the lenses that suited me.
That is actually very common, no doubt. I still, if you ask me, like, honestly, and I would actually buy a lens that I really like, then I look for the camera that can operate it.
Yeah, I've done that.
I have a couple of lenses, and I have an old, but lucky is mirrorless these days, but I had some old Canon FD lenses, and the legendary 85 1.2 FD L mount, and so that's back in the 80s. That's a special lens, but the reason I got that lens, I don't even have an FD camera nowadays, but I just bought the lens because I really like the lens. I like the look of it. I like the rendering of it. But now I actually adapted to both on my Leica and also Olympus digital bodies, even though there's a crop factor going on there. But I just like the look of it. But like you said, I choose a lens first before I even think about the camera. And certain lenses are really gorgeous. And one thing I haven't tried, I would like to try, is Fuji's I can't remember, the 56 millimeters
56,
1.2.
yeah.
Not the normal one, the one that with the softened,
It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah, I know it's gone. I'm
gone.
such a shame that I haven't been able to get one. And maybe in the second hand I'll find one myself later.
Yeah, it might be worth looking. I've never used that one.
No?
I think I've used a regular one. It's the APD one, isn't it?
Yes.
Or
They
something,
actually,
yeah.
Minolta had that lens. I don't know if you recall. Minolta they had an 85 millimeters. That is basically the same lens that Sony later adapted, but they also stopped making them now, and so it's quite hard to find them either. Yeah. So like they kind of stopped that kind of productions, and it's almost had the same philosophy to Olympus feather bokehs. They try to make the edges of the ball a little bit softer, so it give you even creamier bokeh compared to standard lenses. And I mean, I don't know how much more creamier you want to see them. If you shoot wide open, you probably can't see hard edges anyway, unless it's specular highlights, and then you see those really hard circle balls. But yeah, it's interesting.
I think some people are more sensitive to bokeh than others. I'm not particularly sensitive to, but I know a lot of people just look at the defocus backgrounds and they just go on about it for hours. I do see the difference. I do see the difference, but it's not something that affects me greatly. Except one time when I was testing a Leica, and I had a Summilux 28 f2, I think. And I did an indoor shot just in the office of one of my workmates. And the way the sharpness fell away, I've not seen another lens give that same look. I can't really describe it. Some people would say it's the way the lens draws the image.
Yep.
It might be the way the focus falls away, or the bokeh or whatever. But different lenses definitely have different characters, and I've not seen one like that before.
Yep, and this is why, just echo what you said earlier, lenses first.
I've got a broad question actually. You mentioned how big DSLRs used to be.
Yep.
But SLRs, they weren't big. That's all they were.
No, yeah, you're right.
And,
I mean, I have the original OM1, the film OM1. They were quite small as well.
And the other thing is lenses. Why do full frame lenses have to be so big? This is a full frame lens. It's a Pentacon. I'm going the wrong way. It's a 50mm 1.8, and it's just that big. That's a full frame lens. How did they get so big?
I think it's all the
it's the AF
bits, the AF, the motors, everything.
Yeah, linear motors. Yeah.
I mean, they've gone smaller over time, but for some reasons these days they've gone bigger again, and I think it's to do with the design of the lenses.
Yeah,
you can see they're definitely way more complex compared to the older design. The 51.4 lenses before, they were about 6-7 elements in two groups, and now you have a. You have
weren't that
Sony's
great
No, but nowadays, they are tailored for the resolutions of the sensor, so they make it really complicated now. They are like 18 elements in 7 groups, with like multiple spherical elements in it. So the design is so much more complicated. They need the front to be huge to draw the light so it can reflect internally to basically come out from the other end to hit the sensor. It's gone like the whole
It's a shame.
round. It is.
Yeah, it's a shame. But I was struck by the Sony 35 1.4G Master. Spectacularly sharp, amazing lens, and huge.
Yeah.
And Canard 4 not really, but you would never have used an old-fashioned lens wide open like that.
No.
You'd have been asking for trouble.
You know what? The biggest prime lens that I've ever used. It was now the lens considerably smaller than some of the modern lenses. Now it was the EF 85mm 1.2 Canon.
1.2, yeah.
Yeah, the 1.2. It was huge back then, right? It was a huge lens. It was heavy as well. It was like 1.3 kilo, and but that lens compared to some of the 50mm 1.4 lenses is small. Nowadays, you see many lenses are bigger than that, and so it's really crazy.
I went to the launch of the Panasonic Lumix full frame cameras when they first came out, and they had there a couple of lenses, including a 50 1.4, and I thought, no, you made a mistake. This is a 70 to 200. It's huge, but no, it's a 51.4. It must have been that long. And I thought, what's going on? You've got a 50mm lens that long, but as you say, it's people want these lenses to perform properly, wide open. And they want fast AF, so you've got some complicated focus groups being moved around inside the lens.
Yep.
That's why they're bigger.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. And I know people always say that, the simpler the design, the better it is. And to a certain extent, it is.
Depends what you want.
Yeah, and but for some of the more complicated the things that we have to deal with these days, like AF, and also to optimize for the sensor, the digital sensors, is not actually that easy. And to minimize reflections, ghostings, and everything like that is really, really difficult, because digital sensor is so different to negatives or positives in the analog days. How it behaves and how it kind of takes certain light spectrums and frequencies, is very, very different to films. And this is why it's more complicated and also bigger as a result.
They don't like, my understanding is they don't like high angles of incidence. So film didn't bother if the light came at a shallow angle, but with sensors, you have to have one of the Olympus things, wasn't it, in the early days, a telecentric design, so that the light rays all arrive at the center perpendicular. And I think Leica struggled with that in the early days as well, because the old lenses didn't do that.
Absolutely, and you can see the color shifts towards the edges was horrendous.
I didn't even know that was a thing till I saw it.
Oh my goodness! I mean, because I obviously some of you knows that I also use Leicas. Before I switched to Olympus, I had about 2-3 years shooting exclusively with Leica digital M cameras, and so I tested and also used professionally the M9 and the M240 subsequently before they move on to the M10, now the M11, and the sensor definitely has some issues with the older lenses when the light was hitting at an extreme angle towards the edges of the sensor. Yeah. That's when all the color shifting's going, and obviously some of the sensors, the newer sensors now from M240 onward, the sensors, the micro lenses on the actual sensor itself is kind of angled towards the edges to trying to take the light at the right angle, so to minimize the effect. But that shows you how different it is in terms of digital sensors to analog technologies. It's definitely more complicated, and so to make sure that the design of the lens suits the digital performance, let's put it that way. I think that's a better way of putting it.
Are we answering all the questions in the chat, or are we just ranting on ourselves?
We are a little ranting on the moment, but I want to ask some of you guys to start asking questions as well, if you have anything to ask Rod, for instance. But while we're waiting for some of your questions, and there's another question I picked up on the page that I have here, is that some people always say that the portability of Micro Four Thirds is kind of no longer the advantage in, let's say, since about 3-4 years ago, because I think we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Now that Sony's A7 series body is smaller, and they also have some of the weather seal 2.8 lenses, prime lenses are almost as small, if not smaller, than some of the prime lenses that MFT has. And so you don't really think that MFT will still have that portability advantage when it comes to some of the argument that we had about fast shootings and going around doing the easy photography, for instance.
I think probably that kind of conversation, you really need some specific examples to work from. I There are some smaller primes coming out now for Sony bodies. I've got some of them. It's actually quite good timing. If I can find my, is this the right one? There we go. So for MFT, I don't know whether you've got one of these, Jimmy. It's
Can't
I
quite
can't
see.
I can't work out. There we are. It's not like a mirror. This camera. It's the other way around. So that's the 10mm f2.
Oh, the Laowa.
Lower, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So this is a wrong way 10mm f2 lens, which is 20mm f2 in full frame terms. I've got an equivalent for my Sony from Sigma, and it's that. So it's, can I get them both together? That versus that, wrong way. That versus that. So there's the direct equivalent. 20mm lenses, or this is the equivalent, both f2, quite a size difference. So I think if you compare like with like, the difference is still there. I think you've got some of the 1.2 primes, haven't you, Jimmy, which are quite big.
I have.
I have to say.
I mean, I think a lot of people did complain about the 1.2 prime lenses. They're huge. However, and I can kind of go back to my own experience, that when I was a Canon shooter, I mean, I obviously I shoot with the equivalent thing that I had at the time. So I had the 1.4 primes from Canon, and they were all, bigger than all these 1.2 prime lenses.
They are, yeah.
And heavier. And so like I think the word that you mentioned earlier is something that I keep emphasizing time and time again, is like for like. Obviously, like Micro Four Third is a platform, and full frame is a very different format. It's bigger format, so like you can't really compare a 25 Micro Four Third lens to a 25 full frame lens, because the angle of view is different. The usage of that lens is going to be completely different. So it's going to be a very different argument there.
I think the argument you can make is that to get equivalent depth of field and angle of view, maybe say you take a 25mm 1.2 on Micro Four Thirds, that's quite a big lens. Yep. Is it as big as a 50mm 1.2 on full frame? Probably not. But I think probably you've got the 1.2 to get the shallower depth of field, haven't you? And you wouldn't need to go to 1.2 on full frame. So in fairness to both platforms, you would probably say, I think, that the 25 1.2 on MFT is probably equivalent in its overall depth of field and angle of view to perhaps something like a 2.8 or a 2.5, probably f2.5 on full frame. Yep. So it's probably bigger than a full frame lens that would give you that same depth of field and angle of view.
Yes,
but I think that's a special case, because if you're shooting on an MFT and you need shallow depth of field, it's what you have to do.
Well, not only that, depth of field is always going to be a very interesting topic that we're definitely going to have another chat just on depth of field itself and bokeh, and people are going to be jumping up and down about bokeh and depth of field, and but in my photography, depth of field isn't really the equations, and because a lot of the time, my style of shooting is I have to involve the background, and so I can't actually have too shallow depth of field when I have to blur everything out, because then that would defy the purpose of having the background in the first place. And so the reason I use 1.2 is that it gives me the flexibility in lights. So I could deal with lighting changes a lot better than having a slower lenses, for instance. So if I go to a full frame system, for instance, and you're quite right there. I mean, I could easily go for a 2.8 lens, which have the same effect, the same aesthetics, so to speak, compared to the 1.2 prime on the MFT platform. But then if the light's starting to dim, and the ISO will have start pushing up, and at some point, it will come to that line there, is the performance on the full frame really better than MFT? Because I'm using 6400 ISO when in MFT I'm still shooting ISO 800, if not maybe ISO 400, because I'm using 1.2 lens instead of a 2.8. And
Absolutely right. Yeah.
so that's a huge difference for me, and because during daytime, bright daylight, yes, no problem. You know, everybody should the base ISO, get the maximum quality, and you get maximum everything. But when the light starting to dim, that's when the argument started. And especially in my line of work, because I shoot in different lighting situations, I'm outdoor all the time. Suddenly cloud comes in, covers everything, and I have to push the ISO. And then that's the time when I see the 1.2 lenses give me that flexibility by absorbing more light at the same time. So I think that's something that I always talk to all my friends listening right now, and about the 1.2 lenses, not because of the depth of field or the bokeh, but it's more to do with the light.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. I remember back in the days of film SLRs that nobody cared about shallow depth of field. What people wanted was the maximum possible.
Yeah,
You know, they wanted everything sharp from here right to infinity.
yeah,
And that was the popular trend back then. We just flipped at the moment today. We want just one very narrow plane of focus, everything else blurred.
yeah. When did this depth of field thing started? Is it starting from Kai? You know, from Digital Ref on YouTube. You know, like
I think it's a look. I think it's a look that people like. It's become very popular. The defocus background, the planes of focus. I think it's just a look. And
you
also
think so?
the people are just amazed that modern lenses can be so sharp, wide open. They just shoot wide open all the time. They just want to revel in it. But I think it does cause some issues. And this comes back to what we're supposed to be here for, I suppose, talking about different formats. Your lens aperture gives you a window of depth of field control, doesn't it? From shallow, which hand is that? Shallow to deep, whatever the opposite is. With MFT, it edges more towards the deep, so it's easier to get everything sharp from near to far. With full frame, it actually becomes quite difficult to get everything sharp from near to far, so that even if you're shooting at f8, f11, f16, you look at the background, you think, oh, I thought that was going to be sharp, and it isn't quite, and it can't be, because that is the payback. You get shallow depth of field, but then you can't get rid of it. Even at small lens apertures, it's there to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Yeah, the more we talk about depth of field now, I'm starting to sense that we're moving that direction. So let's save it for our next chat.
Stay away.
Let's take it from our next chat. That is going to be interesting.
Right.
Hopefully, you guys will tune into the next chat about bokeh and depth of field. I think that you guys will be happy about. And right, let's say we got one guy here. I'm going to bring in this comment here, and. Right, I did at the time highlighting some comments here. Right, what do you think about bridge cameras for hobby, especially Sony RX10 Mark IV for wildlife? This is from Boa, and this is the interesting thing because we've been talking about like mirrorless cameras and interchangeable lens cameras, ILC, and through the entire chat so far, but we never mentioned about smaller point and shoot cameras that we used to love, really, for the portability side of it. So what do you think about bridge cameras?
I think probably I wouldn't characterize the RX-10 as a point and shoot. It's a very serious camera and quite expensive as well. I haven't used it for this type of work, so I'd be a bit of a fraud if I tried to offer any comment. All I would say is that it's a 1-inch sensor, which does it. You still get very good quality from 1-inch sensors, and it's also quite a big, heavy camera. I'm not sure that zoom goes far enough for wildlife. I would have thought, depending on your wildlife, if it's say birds, for example, or any particularly timid wild animals, you probably need the equivalent of a 600. And I'm trying to remember how far the RX10 Mark IV goes. Is it 400? I think you probably know more about this than me, the person who asked the question. But I suspect it won't go far enough. Regardless of the quality, I imagine the quality is going to be pretty good. The autofocus performance for me is an unknown because sometimes bridge cameras aren't great at full zoom. I don't know much about how good the stabilization is. I'm going to bet it's pretty good. The other issue is that the longer the zoom range, the more you can expect the performance to fall away at full zoom. Now, I can't speak for the RX10, but for lesser bridge cameras I've tried, I wouldn't really care to use it myself beyond about 2/3 of their zoom. But people have different expectations. It would be nice. It would be nice to see if you can find a friendly shop that will let you try one out and point the camera across the road or across the street and get a feel for it yourself. But I suspect the RX10 Mark IV might look as if it covers most bases, but you might end up wishing you got a longer lens.
I guess when you're into a very specialist application such as wildlife or macro, for that instance, for that matter, that only you would know that whether it's close enough or like have that reach that you really need to cover specific subjects. And because we can't possibly think that a 300 millimeters equivalent in a full frame format will be long enough for you. Some people might want 500, 600, 800 even just for that range. And so it's going to be a little bit tricky, but I think to me, and the cameras like that is still quite interesting. And I do hope that they continue that sort of development, and because there's always some needs. And apparently, I saw Digital Cameras who just read an article about the top 10 best-selling cameras.
Right. Yeah.
I read that this morning, and there's two point and shoot camera made it to the top 10. So there is still a market for people using point and shoot cameras, obviously, and then to be able to make those numbers. Yeah. So that's interesting. That's interesting.
It is. Right. So just checking the RX10. It's 24,600, so it might well be long enough, but it is £1,500. And probably
really that expensive.
Oh yeah, no. So this is a serious. This is not like any other bridge camera. This is a serious bridge camera. It's not like say the Nikon P900 or P1000, which is a bit of a Don't even go there.
I have used the Mark II before, but I couldn't remember it was that reach. Yeah, it has that sort of range.
Yeah, so it's got a good range, but if it's an experiment, it's a pretty expensive one. If you decided it's not going to work out. So if you can, try one. Hire one. You might be able to hire one for a day or so. Okay. But at least go down the camera shop. Say, you've got one. Can I try it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I've stressed that many times that the best way to know whether a camera is suitable for you is to actually physically hold the camera and try it yourself. I'm not saying about Michael Four Third, but any cameras. Like the best way to do it is to actually put it in your hand, take some test shots, go back home and have a look at the files. Best still, like what Rod said, if you can hire one, that would be the best thing to do. It might cost you, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 quid to hire the system for a day or two. But that will give you a real experience of actually holding the camera that you're going to invest in, for the next few years. So it's the best to try out yourself, make sure that that's the right system for you, rather than regret it later, whether it's too heavy or whatever, you never know. Okay. We got another comment here. I'm going to bring it in. And, right, how I'm going to do that. Okay, there we go. What do you think of the future of MFT? Specifically for OM system, will there be a fixed lens compact? Ooh.
Well, okay. outside of Olympus, there's the Lumix LX 100 and 102. They're pretty good.
Yep.
So it's been done. But I'm not sure the market or the appetite for fixed lens compacts is really there. I think there's always a little bit of interest in that. I mean, Fujifilm showed it with the X100 series. MFT, I don't know. They're not going to tell you or me, are they? So
don't ask me. I don't know. Even if I know, I think you'll suddenly see this whole screen go black if I say anything. They're going to shoot me with a missile.
You're not going to see the same kind of pace of development, I don't think, as Nikon and Canon or Sony. But I don't know. I suspect the MFT gear is going to be around for a while, going along so merry way. And I think in some ways enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we had a group chat last weekend with other MFT users and ambassadors all around the world, and we actually all have a common saying: photography is all about enjoyment and makes you happy. It's about making you happy, photographing something that you enjoy photographing, and it's not so much about gear. And don't really trying to get into that rabbit hole of gear acquisitions. And I know it can be fun, don't get me wrong, I'm part guilty of that as well. I like acquiring nice cameras, nice lenses over time, but ultimately it's the images that you capture that counts, right? And then it's not much about gear. They give you a novelty and maybe some excitement when you first held it in your hand. First couple of days you'll be, oh, that's cool, look at that EVF, it's got like 6 million dots in it, it looks so clear, but your eyes do adjust to it. So that novelty will soon wear off, and then you will not see any difference. For instance, actually that's a good example to say, the OM1 has an improved EVF, the OM1, and so I've been using it for a whole year now, and but even when I switch back to the older cameras, I actually didn't find that much difference, even though it's low resolutions, and it's weird. I don't know how to explain it. I know it's sharper in the OM1, but for my eyes, when I see through the projected images, I found some of the older digital cameras, it's literally the same. Not the early generations, but and the previous generations is actually more than good enough, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's difficult. You do adapt. I think you're probably more of a photographer than I am, Jimmy. I think I'm probably like most people who are split between the enjoyment of the photographs and the enjoyment of the gear. And I think a lot of people buy the gear that just to pick it up and look at it and play with it. I've got cameras in my cupboard that I just love to take out now and go, oh, this is lovely. I'm going to take the pictures with it. Nah, put it back. But it's nice. But
so
I think
in that case,
photography is your job.
In that case, I have a question for you. It's like, let's say that the OM system camera, the OM1 has a lot of features. So is many other flagship camera these days. So what is a limit in terms of number of features that will say like you have, I don't know how to phrase it, that you'll find that it's not boring to play with.
It's not the features, it's the physical shape.
Right.
The way it works, the way it works. But see, I think this is because of our two different perspectives. Your job is to create images that people like. My job is to relate to people who do both, who like the gear as well. So I think very often when I review a camera, I think it's important that I decide if I like it. And if I don't like it, I need to figure out why, because I think that's going to apply to other people. I mean, I'm terribly shallow. I can pick up a camera and I know straight away, don't like it, or I like it. And I'll take better pictures with the camera I like than when I don't. So if you're talking about swapping systems,
yep,
I chose Sony because it's by far the most logical choice. But I do find it quite boring. It's quite a boring camera to use. MFT is not a particularly logical choice, but I love using the cameras. So we're not all completely illogical. You have to like the stuff you've got.
I guess so. And nothing's perfect in this world, right?
Nothing. Oh no, there's something wrong with everything. But then if you think, I better replace it, then you'll only be replacing it with something that's wrong in a different way. So you just have to accept. Be just reasonably content.
Right.
That's the phrase.
Okay, let's bring in the next questions here. And okay, there we go. Right. What kind of resolution do you think we will have in the future with our current MFT lenses and the future of MFT sensor? Do you think that it will be comparable to current, the word highlighted, current full frame lens / sensors?
I think it's an academic question because by the time MFT sensors and lenses get to that point, full frame lenses and sensors won't still be where they are today. So I would say it will never be the same. But you have to decide what's enough. And for most of what I do, it's already enough. So I think, yeah. So I think this is a technical argument. If I think full frame will always deliver you better quality, it's whether you can use it or whether you need it or what you do with it. If like me, you spend a lot of time just gawping at high resolution images and saying, "Oh my gosh, look, I can see the hair on that head. That's amazing." That's got no practical benefit for the work I do, but I just like doing it. So
Yep.
I guess a lot of people are the same. But no, I don't think MFT will ever get to. It might get to where full frame is now, but it won't get to where full frame will be by the time MFT improves. So
No, but I think I totally agree with you. And we had that conversation, right? Before this live stream, we talked about it, and I think you could literally pick up any digital cameras, dated back to 2012. It still create stunning images, and
yeah,
I think we come to a point that especially for today's photographers who share their images digitally via platforms online, whether it could be Instagram, Facebook, Flickrs, you name it, all these imagery platforms. You're not going to gain too much of having more of what today's camera is offering compared to 10 years ago, for instance. And like, yes, dynamic range could be better nowadays, that maybe one or two stops, so like you may retain the highlight a bit better, or shadows. But then it doesn't stop you from creating stunning images, or even better, using some older techniques, using filters, like grad filters, in landscape. This is still something that people forget about. Like, oh, I think I need a 15, 16 stop dynamic range so I can create stunning landscape images, so I can get all the highlights and shadows and stuff. But look, you can photo stack if you really struggle. You can do a photo merging, for instance, and the bracketing. Yeah, exposure bracketing. That's my word. Or use a grad filter. As simple as that. And but people forgot about all this kind of basic stuff that the older photographers used to do, on a daily basis. And then and people now completely relying on digital manipulations or in-camera AI, whatever processing that they have nowadays, to create an image for you. And I guess that get back to the all arguments of, master the fundamentals of making sure that you know how to operate lights in your cameras, and know the limit and work with those limits, and how you can enhance those limits by using something else. And I think that's quite a interesting thing.
I think I've realised I want to backtrack on what I said a few minutes ago. I don't want to give people the idea that I don't care. I don't care about photography. Actually, I'm quite passionate about photography and creativity. And it occurred to me that one point I wanted to make, perhaps in response to this question about MFT technology and its advancement. I was out a few weekends ago with my phone, and I took some black and white shots with my phone. I was extremely pleased with. They're only 12 megapixels, and you'd just pull them apart compared to even an MFT image quality, but they were good enough. And the point for me was that I would not have shot them on anything but my phone, because my phone was in my pocket. It's a throwaway kind of way of shooting, and I felt that the images in themselves were good enough that
Yep.
their technical shortcomings were secondary. So I think if we become fixated on the technical quality of images, we're taking our eye off their pictorial quality.
Yep.
And just to go back to what you were saying a moment ago about dynamic range and using filters, yes, an old school photographer would have used a graduated filter, but they might also have looked at the thing and said, well, there's 6 stops between that thing in the foreground and the background. The light's wrong, don't shoot it. Simple as that. We're trying to recover things we probably shouldn't have bothered photographing because they're not going to work.
No.
So you have to be practical about it.
It is. It is. I mean, that's surely that I'm not a landscape photographer by any means. So I'm just throwing that fact out because I know a lot of people
Yeah.
who like shooting landscape. For instance, sunset and sunrises, when the contrast level is very high, the foreground is still pretty much dark,
Oh
but the
yeah.
sky
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
starting to come up. If you want to shoot sunset and sunrises, and that's the time when you having this high contrast between the highlight and the shadows, and that's the time when you need high dynamic range sensors, or
And
then you're starting maybe have the photo stack.
sorry, don't look at the brand, Jimmy. But I've got a switch. I've got a switch on the front of this
Yep.
because my dear old Lumix G9 is not terribly good in the shadows. If I flick
Yep.
that switch, it goes into bracketing. So it instantly brackets 5 shots. So when I get
Yep.
back home, I can merge them all in Capture One or Lightroom, and I've
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
an
Yeah. Yeah.
HDR raw file, and it's
Yep.
done with minimum effort. But every camera has its limits,
Yes.
and there are always ways around those limits. And if you wait until cameras don't have limits, you'll never shoot anything. You just
No.
have to know what the limits are and work with them.
Yep.
Cool.
Absolutely.
That came out well, didn't it? Good.
That is right. We got a slightly a light-hearted question here, and let's try to answer this. Watch hobbyist. So, do you have a favorite camera of all time? I find the EM10 Mark II to be something I enjoy immensely. It's nowhere near as powerful as my other camera, but somehow it just works for me.
Yeah, yeah. I've got two. Neither is MFT. Sorry, Jimmy. Um, One of them was a camera I never should have sold, and I even wrote a couple of stories about that on Digital Camera World. My Nikon D7200. So
Yep.
an APS-C DSLR, 24 megapixels, nothing going for it in the modern world, but it just fitted in my hand like nothing else. All the controls where I wanted them. Is just such a satisfying camera to use. I never should have sold it. The other, getting quite emotional now. The other one is a little Fujifilm X30 compact, only 12 million
Oh
pixels.
yeah, no, I remember
Yep.
that. Yes.
Four times zoom, just a brilliant little travel camera and just a delight to use. Technical quality, I'd say, is borderline, is very marginal for what I like these days, but
Yep.
just a great camera. But both of those cameras were great because of their design and how they felt and how they worked, not because of the tech.
Yep. Absolutely. And for me, it's gonna be split. I mean, may have three actually, and I know that I can't name
It's supposed to be
the best,
one. It's supposed to be one.
the best of all time. One is right here. One's right here actually, and is the old school EOS 3.
Yes, yeah. It's nice,
Well,
nice.
I don't know why I like this camera. You know what? This camera came out when I was still in secondary school, and then and I don't know. Maybe it's the technology at the time. The eye control is kind of like, oh my god, it's like an alien technology, you know, like. So like, but I couldn't afford it. Obviously, I was a student, and this thing was quite expensive back then. And then, so I bought this a few years back now. I bought it secondhand, and just trying to relive my childhood memory, you know, about this dream camera that I wanted to get, but I couldn't afford at the time. And it still works. The eye control works, and then even though not so well with my glasses these days, and but it's still to me, I think it's technology quite advanced for the time because if you look at the industry in general, the whole thing, all the AF systems are practically the same, to be quite honest, and there's nothing really stand out. You know, they're all playing around with the metering system. They're all playing around with the mechanical shutter speed. Film cameras were much simpler compared to modern digital cameras. You know, the only several things you can play with in terms of technologies. But then the eye control thing really stood out. You know, it's just, oh wow, you can just look in the viewfinder, it just points to that bit and just focuses it, and I was like, oh wow, that is so cool. So like to me, I think that was at the time that was definitely one of the best cameras, and I still think it's one of the best cameras if you count it, you know, with the period and things like that. And the second one would be my Leica M6, and then I think that is a no-brainer. I think many photography enthusiasts and maybe people who started from film photography would probably agree that that's probably an iconic camera. It wasn't that expensive, you know, to be honest, and it's only recently that's gone through the roof. I don't know why that is. And when I picked it up, it was under £1,000, which is quite cheap for a Leica. And I think now the M6 were £2,500 onward. That's a second-hand price I'm talking about, not new price. A new price is even worse because they just recently released the new M6, right? And the Leica, and then the retail price for the new M6 is like what, $3,500 or something like that, which is ridiculous. And so that's crazy. So, but that's a mechanical camera, and it basically means that it doesn't fail. You don't need a battery to operate. As long as you got a roll of film, put it in, it just works. So that's the beauty of mechanical cameras, and I think that's definitely one of my favorites. And my last one, believe me or not, is the latest OM1. I have to say that, right? No, I'm not. It's definitely one of the best one, and in the last 10 years, I would say, and especially since I switched to Micro Four Thirds. I'll talk a bit more about that in my video separately to this, and so you have to stay tuned for my video about my midterm review on this, and a bit later. So there you go. That's my top 3 best cameras. Best is supposed to be 1, right? I don't know. Best 3 cameras.
1.
Okay, and that's quite a fun discussions on this one. Let me just bring another in. Let's see. Oh, that's an interesting one. Bo, I have another one. Well, what do you think about the future of photography? That's more general. And I think only sports and wildlife will remain with big tele lenses because of physics. That's an interesting one.
Would you care to elaborate? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to see if there's any follow-up here. Nope, there's no. Okay, let's strip the second part of it. Let's talk about the first bit. What do you think about the future of photography? Because there is an argument lately, especially quite popular topic in the last couple of weeks, is the AI imagery. You know, the AI generated images that can do online these days. So it takes away a lot of human input when it comes to actually physically going to a location and shoot something. So what do you think about photography? How it stands against, you know, AI stuff, you know, and whether it's going to have a positive or negative impact in the world of photography, especially for photographers like ourselves who enjoy going out to take photographs, while some more maybe newer generations will think that, oh, just save the effort, you know, let me go home and type something and let the computer generate something, and maybe I can just Photoshop myself in it.
It depends what you want the image for, doesn't it? If you just want an image to illustrate something as just a prop for a bit of content, that's different. But I think photographers and their customers will always value individual expression. That's why you choose a photographer and hire a photographer, because only that photographer will see the images that you want. So it's like the old argument between art and photography, isn't it? People thought that photography would kill art. Well, it didn't, because it turns out that people want the very specific individual expression that artists offer that nobody else can do, because nobody else can see it in quite the same way. So I think AI will ruin photography in a kind of broad sense, because it'll become even easier to just come up with a lot of crowd-pleasing images, which may or may not be real. But I think if you're talking about unique images that are specific to a particular artist or photographer, I don't think that'll change.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think that that really depends. I mean, I had similar kind of discussion with another photographer last weekend, and basically we talked about certain things. I think from a commercial point of view, let's say commercial photographer who does generate a marketing campaign, advertising campaign for big companies, that could potentially be a cost-saving measure. Let's say instead of have to physically fly yourself out to a location, waiting for the perfect moment to photograph the background with the model in front of it, and then you can simply have the model on the green screen, and then you generate the background like artificially, and have this perfect location with the perfect lighting conditions, and you just superimpose the subject into it. Because marketing is very different in the commercial world, and it's not technically classified as art. You know, it's just basically generate an attractive image to attract customers. That's the purpose of it. And I think from that sense, and AI imagery can be useful, and also definitely cost saving, because you don't have to physically go out and do it. And you can have your model anytime in your studio, you know, have a big fan blowing. It looks like you're actually in a location doing something, and you superimpose the model into a location. And you can see amazing artists, how much they can do and manipulate a photograph digitally on Photoshop later to make it completely different. So this can be very useful. But from an artistic point of view, like what Rod just said, as a photographer, we have certain sense, and when we go out and shoot, we interact with the subject at the locations, we bring out the elements from them, and we shoot with what we have using available light and the certain conditions to generate the image that is personalized, relating to that specific moment. It's something that you cannot replicate digitally with a few words you type on a computer, and because the computer doesn't feel for you how the emotional attachment that you can generate through the images. So that's, I think, from that sense, I don't think that that AI can replace that. So people will have to, as a photographer, you have to draw the line there. Which how you're going to use the AI. You can use AI for everything, and I do think AI is here to stay. That's for sure. And AI is going to improve. That's for sure. And I do like AI for one thing, is for editing, and Photoshop, and on one or the other camera or software companies now. And Rod, you probably review a couple of softwares like DxO. They use AI for noise reductions as well. So AI does play a big part in modern digital editing, because they are definitely getting more advanced and getting better result better result, in the end, which is actually beneficial for all digital photographers who get better results at at the end of the day. So I think this is really good. And let's see. Oh, okay. Oh no, Boa came back with the future photography question. Right. Okay. I think only sports and wildlife will remain with big telelenses because physics. Okay, we'll do AI and smartphones.
So they think that only sports and wildlife photographers will use mirrorless or DSLR cameras, and everybody else will use a phone. I don't think so. Myself, I think people will always be aware of the difference in quality, and I think the other issue with algorithms is that the audience will become more sophisticated, and they will be able to discern the difference between an AI image or an algorithm enhanced image. And funnily enough, I was thinking about this earlier today, and I think it's like the difference between supermarket food and home cooked food. Supermarket food is fine, but it's always the same. It's always going to be so good and no better. But food you cook yourself is a different thing. And you can tell the difference.
That personal touch, right?
Yeah, especially if you mess it up. But yeah, so
you burn your food, and then
I don't think everyone will use a smartphone. I think smartphones are not the easiest thing to take pictures with. There are various little tricks that they have, like the iPhone's portrait mode, which mostly works, but is rarely completely convincing. I've used the cinematic mode for filming kind of casual bits of video, and that was a bit of a disaster because it kept changing its mind about who should be focusing on. So, I mean, it's fine, but I think phones will not replace the cameras we're talking about. I think phones have probably gone as far as they're likely to, myself, but who knows? I think the bigger question is whether people don't use a camera at all and just get some AI to make an image.
Yep.
Including people who might want to be customers, sadly. But I think it's going to depend on, going back to your earlier thing, Jimmy, I think it's going to depend on the brand. I think a local real estate agent might use AI generated imagery. Yep. I think a big car brand will not, unless they do it as a joke, as part of the campaign. but say Aston Martin, they're not going to say, oh, let's save £750,000 by getting some AI images and a bit of stock photography. They're going to say, no,
yep.
£250,000 it is. Fly them all out, get the shots, come back in a week.
Yep, I need the real thing.
Yeah.
Very good. Right, we have Uncle, trying to get this in. Uncle Aro, I have a question. I'm considering switching to Micro Four Third for sports and low light. I'm now using Nikon D500. And how good is the EM1 Mark III? Right. Okay. Let's strip away the M1 Mark III equation first, because we just talked about Michael Four Third. And to be, let me talk a little bit first before I hand it over to you, Rod. And I think Michael Four Third, in terms of image quality, even though the OM1 uses a more advanced sensor, but in terms of the lower light uh, image quality is actually fairly similar in terms of noise patterns and things like that, and noise performances. OM1 does have a little bit more or easier patterns to work with, so if you want to clean up in post, and it's probably give you a better results, because the color renditions is retained instead of having color casts and so forth. But if you look in general, most of the MFT cameras, they are very, very similar. So we can kind of generalize them into just one categories there, just any Michael Four Third cameras. So now down to the questions to Rod is that, do you think it's feasible to switch to Michael Four Third from D500 is APS-C camera for sports and low light?
So I'm going to go back to an earlier thing. Choose the lenses, then the camera. And for this, I'm going to name two lenses. So it's the Olympus 40 to 150 2.8, which is effectively an 80 to 300 2.8. Try getting a 300 millimeter 2.8 inside any sort of budget in any other system. And the other is a 300 f4, which is quite expensive, I know, but effectively a 600 f4. It's been a while since I used a D500. I'm going to say you are not going to find any lenses of the caliber of those two for the D500 without spending a very, very great deal of money. So that's how I would approach it. I think image quality wise, well, they've got the same resolution. The M1 Mark III, I think, has probably got slightly fresher, newer sensor. You might see a difference. I can't say because I've not done a direct comparison. I wouldn't expect to see a big one. But for me, it would be the lenses. And I think if you're getting into long range photography, there is no system like MFT for letting you do that with good quality lenses at a price you can afford, or might one day afford. 300 f4.
Unless you have a very deep pocket.
Well, quite. I mean, so on the D500, what lenses could you use? I think you might probably end up with something like a Sigma 150 to 600, which would give you a 900 millimeter effective focal length. That's pretty long, but it's fairly slow at the long end. I think it's a 5.6 or a 6.3. So that's probably going to be the go-to lens for the D500, and it's good, but it's not that good. So that would be my approach. Start with the lenses, then worry about the camera.
Yeah. And actually, we there's another element there as well, that we talked about lenses, but also the AF. And the M1 Mark III does have a pretty good AF, and I think for fast moving objects, and it's definitely something to consider as well, especially when you consider what Rod just said about the 40 to 150 2.8 lenses, and in a lower light situations, you do need a brighter lens to work with in terms for the AF to work perfectly. If you're D500, and if you want to get something equivalent in that categories, you're going to be spending a fortune to get something decent. If not, then you'll be like probably going for something like a 5.6, 6.3 maximum aperture in the longer end, and that means that by then your AF system may struggle to trying to pick up the focus, because it's so little light going through the sensor, and that means that you will definitely struggle. We not even talk about image quality, is whether you can actually nail the shot first in the first place. So in that case, like for like, if you're going for the budget wise, and I think MFT and together in combination of those longer 2.8 MFT lenses, you definitely get a better chance of nailing the shot, and potentially getting better quality depending on your situation and shutter speed and settings, so forth.
There's also the teleconverter you can put on the 40 to 150s. It's quite fast already at 2.8. That'll only take you to f4 or f5.6 with the 2 times, and then you've got effectively what's that come out as, 80 to 600, something like that. So I think that's the way I would approach it. I'm not really a sports and wildlife photographer. I've done it, but it's not really my thing. But I would say what you need most of all is the right lenses, and
Yep.
then worry about the camera. I don't think you'll find the EM13 lacking.
No, definitely not. And I still think that's one heck of a camera, to be quite honest. And
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, even now that I'm still using that the EM1 Mark III for quite a lot of the stuff, on top of the OM1 that I also have, and yeah, the EM1 Mark III won't disappoint you. So,
no,
but like we said earlier, go out if you can, hide a camera, maybe just try out for a few times, with the lenses that you need, or the range of lenses that you need to cover whatever you want to shoot, and have a go yourself. Then you'll know which one is better for you. But you definitely see a big difference there. Especially D500 didn't have a great stabilization system, and that's another thing we didn't talk about. The IBIS on the E1 Mark III is quite insane, to be quite honest. If you put a long lens there, you half hold the shutter speed, you can see how stable the footage is, so you won't go dizzy when you come panning and stuff.
the only thing I would say is that with the D500, you're getting no blackout during burst shooting. With a mirrorless camera, it can be quite difficult following a fast moving subject because usually they just momentarily display the last frame captured. I
Yep.
don't know if the M13 has a kind of live view or not, but I think you might. That's the one instance where you might find the D500 easier because even though you've got the mirror going up and down, you still got a very literal live view with no latency and no lag. It's easier to do panning shots in burst mode.
Yep.
But if you're talking about bird photography and waiting a long time, picking a moment, precise framing, I would say go with the lenses with the MOT system. That would be my feeling.
Cool. Well, thanks for that, Rod. And we have another one. I think we're gonna see, maybe pick up two or three more questions, and we can start to wrap things up a little. Okay. This is an interesting one, and Andrew, right? This I can't answer because I haven't used one, but Rod, you probably can. And how much better is 25 megapixel sensor on a GX6 compared to the 20 megapixel on the OM1? You've seen both probably, and then you
Yeah,
can answer that.
I haven't shot the same thing on both cameras side by side, so I can't offer a direct comparison. I'm just going to guess that the extra 5 megapixels is a straight gain in resolution, but it's not going to be a big one. As for how good the sensor is, I have heard people say, I think GP Review said the dynamic range came out slightly lower than the GH5 Mark II, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's significant or not. It depends on what you consider better. If I had a choice, I'd rather have 25 megapixels than 20, but I'm not sure how much difference it actually makes. It's not the first thing I'd look for.
No.
The GH6 is a lot more expensive, and it's also geared very much towards video, and I think that's reflected in its handling and controls. So that it depends on whether if you're a video shooter, it's GH6. It's got to be no question. But if you're a still shooter, I've got a feeling the GH6 may do things you don't really need. That might occasionally get in the way a bit. And one day you might think, wait a minute, I just paid £2,000 for a camera where I'm only using £1,500 worth of its features. If you know what I mean, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yep, absolutely. And GX6, obviously I haven't held one myself, and but by the looks of it, is a fair bit bigger than the OM1, isn't it?
Yeah. I like that myself, but a lot of people will then say, "Oh, what's the point of MFT when the cameras are so big?" Goes back to the lenses. But yes, it is a big camera. but I like it for that. It's
Right.
fine.
Okay. That's good. Right. I think I basically caught up with most of the questions and comments. I know that I will miss some questions. Let me see if I can find one or two. If not, then we can start wrapping things up a little and go for the next chat we have in store for you, because I think we already decided what we're going to talk about next time, judging by the reaction from you guys about bokeh and depth of field. So that's our next chat, by the way. And
Okay, all right. Thanks for telling me. Thanks for telling me.
Right. Okay. Let's see if I think I got a new questions here. Let's see. Have I missed one here? Okay. Oh no, they're talking among themselves about
Uh-oh.
the comparison between
That's always
GX6 and
bad.
OM1. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So there's no more questions, and I know that I haven't mentioned anybody else's names this time. I should have, and because of the audio technical difficulties we had early in this in this chat, and I completely forgot about saying hello to everyone. So once again, so hello and welcome everyone who joined this chat today. Thank you very much for watching, and hope that you find this chat interesting and educational. Like I said, Rod is a very experienced photojournalist, and then he knows a lot of stuff and also seen a lot of stuff as well. By comparison, I don't see as many cameras as he is, and then I might see lenses, but I'm quite narrow. I see more M43 lenses than anybody else, maybe. But then I don't see full frame, I don't see APS-C, so that's why I think Rod is a very valuable contributors here, and we can chat about different things. We can talk about, and possibly, given his experience, talk about different systems and give you more informative information, so you can actually make your own decisions whether you want to do something with the MFT or something else in the photography in general. So that's very good. And so thank you, Rod, for joining. And you are going to be next time as well, talk about bokeh and shallow depth of field. This is going to continue. This is going to run for definitely for a long while, and hopefully we get more interesting subject to talk about. I mean, it's all down to you guys, and because this chat is driven by you, or whatever you want to listen and to want to learn about, basically. Don't forget to check out Rod's website. I have the link in the description, and so you can check out his content. And also, I'm not sure whether you picked up what Rod, for those who join later, after Rod's introduction, he writes a lot for different publications and stuff. You may actually have come across his name. But I don't know how many of you actually, when you read an article, whether you actually read who wrote it first.
It's very important. Very important.
But I guarantee you, if you go to any websites and you read some of the review articles and stuff like that, you probably will come across Rod's name, and that's a guarantee. So he's very experienced, like I said. So thank you very much for coming over here and speaking to us with all and sharing all your experiences on different things about photography.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Right. And. Someone thinks I think it's very entertaining chat. Thank you. I think that's good. That's good to hear. That's very good.
Well, if we can't be right, we can be entertaining. That's the least we can do.
Yeah, well, we did talk about having a sing along next time, maybe. And,
no. I'm
gonna have some music playing in the background, and we're gonna start singing. But yeah, so this is all cool, and we're gonna have more stuff coming. So stay tuned for our next chat. I'm gonna put maybe another poll in my community page, and you can all vote for the topics for the following chats, and so that we can move forward from there. So thank you very much, and once again I'd like to apologize for the audio technical difficulties earlier, because that was unexpected. I have no idea what happened there, but Rod tried to unplug his mic a few times. I tried something here, and somehow it worked after 10 minutes. So hopefully I didn't piss anybody off, and hopefully they will come back next time. But it's been great fun, and thank you for all your input, and it's all been valuable, and it's been fun as well. And this is all about a photography community. We all love and share, and so. Until next time, I guess, and I will see you all soon. And thank you again, Rod.
Wow, it's a pleasure. Look forward to the next one.
Excellent. So I'm going to finish this chat now, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.